Welcome to developing your brand's story brand in just 1 hour. It's about putting together your messaging to make sure it is cohesive, coherent, and makes sense for your business and for your audience. My name's Dante St. James. Let's share that screen and get underway. This is an interactive session, and I suggest you follow along at MyStoryBrandcom. If you can sign up for that website at MyStoryBrand.com. Look, it won't be that bad. You won't have to, you're not going to miss anything by not doing that. You may want to watch this now and then later on come back and watch it again through and do the MyStoryBrand.com follow along. But for now, just sit back, relax, grab a coffee if you need to, as we explore the world of putting together your brand and the story that sort of sits behind your brand as well. It's going to seem a little bit weird sometimes because in some points we're going to the movies. A quote from Benjamin Disraeli: "People talk to people about themselves, and they will listen for hours." And he was the next Prime Minister of Britain, who was the very first Jewish Prime Minister of Britain. And excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough at the moment, so you'll have to excuse the occasional frogginess. And he also was known as Silent Ben, and it was called Silent Ben because he was very good at listening to people so that then he'd be able to repeat back to them the problems they were going through and the hassles of life that they were going through, so they felt like they were listened to. Obviously did pretty well for him because he got voted in as Prime Minister. This is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program in conjunction with Regional Development Australia and Treaty Business Consulting as well. This can be viewed a little later on YouTube. I'll be uploading it after this. I've got a couple of versions of this particular workshop already on YouTube. So if you want to watch those ones or pick up this one, if this is the one that you feel like resonated with you, it'll be available through Business Station's channel on YouTube or my channel, Dante St. James, on YouTube as well. And if you are watching this after the fact on YouTube, I'd love you to whack some comments down below and ask the questions that you would normally ask, like the live attendees we've got in here today on Zoom. And while you're on YouTube, it'd be great if you could give a subscription to the channel so you can find out all the things that are coming through almost every weekday right through the next month in this particular program. This whole concept is based upon the book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Donald Miller is a bit of a visionary when it comes to that whole connection of brand and your business to what it is that people actually need from you, rather than just us preaching this is what we do. It uncovers that story, that underlying motivation that your customers have for why they would choose you, and also your own motivation for why you should be chosen as the alternative for what you do. You can find out more about that particular book at StoryBrand.com. So what we're going to cover today is what your customer wants, what their problem is. These are very easy things to uncover, and the process of being their guide. And we're going to do a lot of it by going to the movies. So the fourth part will be looking at what success is for your customer. And it's very easy then to go, well, if we focus on the success for the customer, what their best outcome is, we ignore what the potential pitfalls of failure are for them. And they're actually a lot more motivating than what the successes are. They'll make sense a little bit later on. And then we'll look at the transformation that you, the guide, will be delivering to them. My name is Dante St. James. If you didn't catch that, I haven't seen, I think I've probably all three of you who are live. Actually, no, there's a few more dropped in. Okay, there's more like 17 of you now on listening live. So thank you for joining. I haven't met you all yet, but my background is studying marketing and business information systems at the University of New South Wales in Sydney. Have done all 6 of the certifications with the Chartered Institute of Marketing. And I continue to do about 2 micro-credentials every year with TAFE New South Wales, just to make sure I've got those little bits of accreditation that are important when you're working in as an advisor. I'm also part of Facebook's Boost program. So I work for Facebook Australia and New Zealand as a trainer, a digital marketing associate, and a media planning professional. In addition, we also work with Google's Digital Springboard program and 3 different government programs, including this one, ASBAS Digital Solutions, the New Business Assistance with NICE program in Alice Springs and Darwin, and the network partnership with Be Connected, which is for older Australians, keeping them connected online. Now, at the end of all this, what we want to do, and this is not a promo for me, this is an example of one of the things that comes out of this, is a message that makes sense on things like websites and social media that's very much encapsulate what you do. What I do is transform hesitant business owners into confident, capable marketers. Makes sense. Simple message. That came out of me doing a particular brand story session or story brand session with a StoryBrand certified expert who helped me to extract that message out, including the smaller messages there of the outcomes that I want to get, the handle on what your customers really want, wasting time and money on marketing programs, find the support and direction you've been looking for. All those things are part of what the StoryBrand process helps you to extract. And there's a lot more to it as well. Let's just say these are divorce lawyers. Their simple one is get through divorce with a team that knows and cares. And they talk about getting answers, creating a plan, achieve stability. All these elements on this particular website have been extracted out of the StoryBrand process. It could be that you've got a podcast, or you've got a sales related or coaching business. You might want to boost your business weekly. It's a simple thing. Get this, make this, watch this, listen to the podcast. Simple instructions in a very simple way to help you get what you need out of that particular business. This one is a wedding catering company, which is wedding catering with you in mind. This is your day. We'll make sure the food is perfect. It's got a quick call to action of getting a quick quote. And then it talks about reliable service, customizable menu, happy guests, which are all the outcomes of doing a StoryBrand process for them. But how do we get there? How do we go from not knowing what a story is, or a brand story for all that matter, and we're not really knowing how we'd approach the start of it, or even how to then apply it once we got it to things like social media and our websites? Well, you go through a process, and the process is usually step one, do a guided brand script session at MyStoryBrand.com. And you can actually follow along with that now if you like. You can register for it. We've still got a couple of minutes before we get underway with the meat and veg of what we're doing tonight. The second thing could be uncovering what your brand message may be from what your responses are. So you then look at those responses, and you sit down with someone who's like a StoryBrand certified expert, or someone who's StoryBrand experienced like myself. And you can then, number three, apply that brand script to your website and your marketing materials and your online properties, such as Facebook and Instagram and all those places. Now, number two and number three can all be helped decide through the ASBAS Digital Solutions subsidized sessions. So if you've already registered for the program, before the end of July, you'll be able to do that session with myself. I think I'm the only one who actually does these on the program. So you can book one in for myself. I've just opened up new availability later in the month because I was actually booked out, and I've had to go and cancel some other things. So I'm able to do a few more ASBAS sessions with people like yourselves. I'll have those details a little bit later on for you as well. But first, before we go down the path of getting you to follow up on all this, we're going to go to the movies. Specifically, the first movie we're going to look at is a movie called Eat, Pray, Love. Don't know if you've seen it, but it's a story about Liz, who is played by Julia Roberts, and she has a bit of a problem. She's locked in a loveless marriage, and she really feels like there's more to her. There has to be more to life than this. So she needs a fix, and she gets a quick fix to try and feel better and solve that problem. And she goes and gets a new boyfriend, leaves the husband, gets a new boyfriend. He's a bit of a wild child. And what we find is now that her life is no better because she's just trying to fix these things on herself. So clearly she needs some guides through life, some coaching through this process of actually getting a better life. So the first thing is she finds a guide who gives her a call to action and gives her a plan of how to succeed. And that in this particular movie, her Swedish friend in Rome was one of those guides. She was very fortunate. She had other guides too. A guy called, he's James Taylor. He's not James Taylor, that guy, but his name is James Taylor in the movie, which is, he was named after that famous singer. There's another guide who gives her a plan and gives her another call to action. And that's in India, which is the pray part of the title. Eat was in Rome, pray was in India, and the love part was in Bali, where she comes across Ketut, who's a chief in his village, and he gives her a plan and a call to action as well that's appropriate for that stage of her life, and it helps her to get some success in her life and to avoid some failure. If that's not a familiar story to you, maybe this one is. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Luke Skywalker is living on a planet where he feels like he's got this sense of destiny. There's something more to his life, but he's not sure what it is. So going through a long story and cutting it down to about a minute, he has a run-in with the Galactic Empire, who comes and basically murders his adoptive parents, who are his aunt and uncle, because his parents died at a very young age, and burned down the farm that he was working at. So what happens is he needs a fix. He needs something more. So he comes across his guide, Ben Kenobi, a man who lives in the caves and knows secrets. He knows things. One of those things that he knows is that Luke indeed is right. There is more to his life than what is immediately obvious. So he gives Luke a plan, shows him a lightsaber, and says, "This was your father's. In fact, your father was a great Jedi warrior. He was able to help to defend the Galactic Republic before this evil empire came along," which then gets Luke thinking, "Really? I did not know any of this. This is really bizarre." So he gets a call to action to go and save the princess who's trapped upon a big space jail called the Death Star, which blows up planets. And he's able, through some hard work, some learning, and some hooking up with this new rebellion, to blow up the space jail, save the princess first, of course, get her out of there, and therefore save the galaxy. He becomes a galactic hero. He goes transformed from a naive kid who knows nothing about the world and the galaxy and the universe as a whole to a galactic hero who's just helped save the day. This is called the hero's journey. This is a very simplified part of it. Now, what this has to do with your business comes in the next screen. Basically, a character has a problem. That character then meets the guide, who gives them a plan of action and calls them to carry that action out. And that action leads them to success, and also by consequence helps them to avoid the horrible failure that could be happening in their life. So at the end of the story, they're transformed. A customer is a similar character. They have a problem, and they meet you, the guide, who's going to help them to get that problem solved. You give them a solution and the reasons and tools to use it that leads them to solving that problem in their lives and avoids the results of failing to solve it, so that they are transformed. What are they transformed from? From not having the tools they need to solve the problem, to having the tools to solve that problem, to not having the thing that they need to buy to fill that hole in their life, to buying that thing and having that thing that fills that hole in their lives. It's every customer's journey towards you, no matter what your service or your product is. They all go through this process. It's not just a matter of, I need to go and get a trailer. Here's a trailer. There's an actual journey that people go through when they come to you. They go to not only hire the trailer or to buy the trailer, but they have to go through a journey of learning about trailers, knowing whether they can actually drive a trailer, whether they've even got a tow bar that's on there, and they might get advice from lots of different people on whether they should be getting a trailer or whether they should be getting a truck to do that move of that house with. So that may not sound appropriate for your business. Bear with me, because we're going to break down that journey to each step that gives you a chance to understand it. Now, if you are following along at MyStoryBrand.com, thank you. This is going to make a lot of sense to you. If not, you can always jot these questions down and your answers to them as we're going. So the first step in the journey, principle number one, is the character. The character is a customer, and they're the hero of the story, not you. You're not Luke Skywalker. You are not Liz in Eat, Pray, Love. You're actually the guides. You're actually the series of guides that Liz goes and sees in her movie, and you're the guide of Ben Kenobi that Luke Skywalker sees in Star Wars. So let's start off with something which is a transformation. In 2019, a particular resort hotel in America was brought to the attention of Donald Miller and the StoryBrand team. They wanted to know how to get more people to not just come to their website, but book on their website. They had no shortage of traffic. They had no shortage of people coming to that website, but they seemed to have a real issue with people actually booking on it. They come there, they look at pricing, and they go away, and they wouldn't do anything with it. They said, we do know that there is definitely a demand for what we do, because we are the top hotel. In fact, we won the national award winner for service in 2019. The problem was that was what their website said. Their website literally had a photo of empty reception desks in a great big lobby of their hotel, telling that they're a national award winner for service in 2019, and the photo showing no service being delivered. It kind of seems like a dumb thing, but they didn't even think about that. They were so important to them to express that they were the award winners for service that they completely forgot that it's not about them. It's actually about the guests who are going to stay there. So they flip the script. And one of the things they do first is include the experience that the guest can expect to have in that hotel resort, which was a picture like the one on the right, where them actually enjoying the facilities and the amenities of their hotel room, actually participating in the luxurious part of that resort, rather than a nice reception area that is empty of all kind of life. And they changed the opening message from National Award winner for service in 2019 to find the luxury and rest you've been looking for. It's a big difference. And it certainly did its thing, changing all their photos over from empty, spacious excuse me, pictures of rooms and golf courses and empty pools to showing people in there, showing rooms being being interacted with, pools being swum in, bars actually with people at them, service actually being delivered. And the change was almost immediate, that people now could actually see themselves in there. They didn't see empty rooms, which meant nothing to them. They now saw, okay, this is how the room gets used. That looks like a really comfy bed. I can see the way they're laying. They look really comfortable. That's the kind of experience I'm looking for. And you can see this again and again in other people's websites and their ads, where, say, a lawn mowing service that may have a flyer that goes out and it says, something to do with, having, we're 100% local with over 20 years of experience of mowing lawns in this area. Well, that's great. Well, what does that mean to me? Well, what it means to me is that it will be a lawn that make your neighbors jealous. And that will be good. I'd like to be able to do it if I had a lawn. I'm in an apartment, but if I was living in a place that had a beautiful garden and all the gardens around me are beautiful, and I wanted to make sure that mine did too, well, having a lawn that makes your neighbors jealous may be something important to you. The South Side's favorite L'Oreal salon means nothing to anybody, but the perfect space to relax with your best friend definitely means something to someone. Having photos that express what's going on, like the photo of friends actually at the spa, a photo of the lawn mowing actually happening and showing it like deep, rich, green, lush lawns. Yeah, that's going to say a lot more than just that we're 100% local over 20 years experience, because no one really cares. That's not solving the problem that people have. Let's just say it's a fruit box delivery service, fruit and veg boxes with a wide range of fresh fruit and vegetables. Well, that's telling me a bunch of features. It's not telling me what's in it for me. What's in it for me is no crowded shopping centers, just perfect fresh food delivered to you. That sounds good to me. Unlocking your hidden potential for a life of freedom and success, if it's a coach, for instance, doesn't mean anything to anyone. They're just words, they're corporatisms. But better relationships, better businesses, a better life in every way. That speaks to me as somebody who has had challenges in relationships, as someone who has had challenges in business. I want a better life in every way. That really appeals. So, how do we then continue on with this? We then note down, what do we really think that our customers want? What do they want as it relates to our particular products or services? So you can jot that down, or at least if you're not going to be filling this out tonight, put these questions down. These are questions you need to ask yourself as part of that journey of coming up with the right brand messaging. The second principle is that the customer, they have a problem. The problem is, though, from our perspective, that we're not really addressing their problem, because we like to sell solutions to what are called external problems. But customers buy solutions to internal problems. Now, what does that mean? Firstly, you need to look at how a story goes. A story has a villain, it has external problems, it has internal problems, and they become philosophical problems. Again, what does that all mean? What it is there's some great villain in every customer's life, in your life even. There's a great villain that's stopping you from doing something. And that's causing a whole bunch of external problems outside you that you feel like you can't control. And that's making you feel something. It's making you feel frustrated, hesitant, confused, disoriented, helpless, angry even. And the philosophical problem is there. It's just plain wrong that you should have to go through that, because somebody should be a guide that gets you through that process. So that's you. You're the guide that gets them through the process. Understanding the villain is the big problem that your customers have to overcome. And I've got some examples of that coming forward. So the problem could be that drinking soft drinks makes you fat because it's full of sugar. And you can say, well, that causes external problems such as it's got diabetes could come on from that. It is bad for your teeth. It's the cheaper way to buy drinks rather than buying, fresh juices or buying coconut water and things like that. It's just cheaper to get a can of Pepsi or Coke or Sunkist or Fanta or something like that. And that's causing a person who needs it to buy drinks to have an internal frustration. And that frustration is, I really want the sugary drink, but I know it's going to kill me. And it's simply wrong that they should have to go through that, because there's a range of perfectly good sugar-free alternatives. Now, like them or hate them or believe the conspiracy theories about, diet soft drinks causing cancer. Everything causes cancer. Breathing causes cancer. Everything has to do with that. But that notwithstanding, it's just philosophically wrong. It's just so wrong. They don't have to put up with that because there is an easy alternative. So let's look at an example. If you're living in a remote area of Australia, you can probably relate to this a bit. The villain is that fresh fruit is expensive in a remote area. So that's the villain. The external problem is that the cost of freight makes fresh produce expensive to get to remote locations. So that external problem is not something you can do a lot about. You also can't do anything about the villain. The villain's going to exist. So it causes you to feel powerless and at risk of poor health because you feel like you don't have access to fresh fruit and veg like people in the cities will. And it's philosophically wrong because all Australians deserve access to affordable, fresh food, right? Makes sense. Another example could be, oops, wrong side, this way. There we go. So the next villain is that it's difficult to find darker shades of foundation in makeup for darker skin. Now, that's the villain. But the external problem is that makeup companies tend to cater more towards lighter skin tones. The internal problem, it makes a customer feel like they're not normal because they're not catered for. And it's just plain wrong that someone should have to feel like that because women come in all kinds of skin types and tones. So the villain is the big problem that sits out there. You can't fix the big problem until you come back and actually look at what the big problem is making someone feel. Once you understand what they feel, you have what is called a little bit of empathy. And that's the theme of the next part. Another villain could be that it's difficult to find schooling for kids with special needs. The external problem is that society tends to be geared towards those without special needs. The internal problem, it makes a parent feel alone and unable to care for their child and their failure. This is just plain wrong because education should be available for all kids regardless of their needs, right? Makes sense. So, what would be the villain in your case? What is the problem that you think could be happening in your case? Can you even personify that root cause as a villain? Is the root cause that availability of recycling is not great in your town? Could the root cause be that there's no good wedding venues in town? Could the root cause be that there are no options to be given good advice on what home to buy? Then your external problem is, what of all the things that actually, like, if the root cause is there, if the root problem is there, the external problem then is like the symptoms. So the symptoms of not being able to have, not having good advice before you buy a home because you're just being spoken to by sales reps in real estate agencies. Well, the external problems are that you may pay more for the house than you probably need to. You might even go and actually be kind of careened into buying a house you don't actually want. It could be that you are given finance options that are well above your affordability. So all those little external problems would happen. And internally, it makes you feel overwhelmed. It makes you feel like you've been tricked and you'd be betrayed when you actually find this. So it's just plain wrong that anyone should go through that process because there are options such as buyer's agents. for properties. So that's the way I think they put that together is identify what the villain is. Identify what the external problems that are being caused and how that makes someone feel, the internal problems. And then finally, those philosophical problems. Why is it just plain wrong that someone should have to go through that heartbreak or that pain or that hassle or that friction just to get the thing that they want that you happen to sell? Now, the good news is, along the way to the customer, having all that frustration, internal frustration going on, they get to meet a guide, and you are that guide. Principle number 3 is that customers aren't looking for another hero. They're the hero. They're the one who has to overcome it. You don't have to overcome it for them, but they are looking for a guide who can take them there. And that guide could be in the form of a music service. No, just like this is a particularly telling story about someone who probably should have sought out a guide before starting this particular music service. The Tidal is a very high quality music streaming service that was founded by Jay-Z, who's married to Beyonce. Beyonce was part of this and an investor as well, as was Kanye West and a number of other big wigs in Hollywood. They wanted to design a music service that respected the music, it respected the artist, got the artist what they were due, and gave the artist control over the process. The problem was that nobody ever asked the customers of music what they wanted. The customers were using things like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Google Play Music, other services like that, and seemed to be pretty happy with them. So if Jay-Z and his cohort had have actually sat down with a group of people who are not just people who say yes to everything they say, they would have a wildly successful music platform right now, because they could have focused on things that people were looking for, which was better quality audio that uses better audio technology to deliver it to them, or exclusive releases. His wife Beyonce could exclusively release her new album through that service, and that would bring so many millions of people onto that platform. But instead, he focused on the things that were all about him. I want to be respected. I want my music to be respected. I want to be paid what I'm due. I want to have control of the process, which has absolutely nothing to do with the listener of the music, the customer of the service, the ones who actually will pay for it. So this brings us to the first thing that a guide needs to have when they want to advise someone like Jay-Z or yourselves or your customers. They need to have a sense of empathy. They need to ask this question: how are you helping me win the day? How am I helping my customer overcome their problems and win the day? Empathy doesn't look like the kind of statements that say, supporting a local business, we love what we do, roasting our own coffee, because none of those things bear anything towards a customer. Supporting a local business, to be honest, if we really wanted to support local businesses, none of us would shop at Coles and Woolworths, and we'll all shop at our local IGA or corner store. The reality is, supporting a local business is not that important to most people. They may pay some lip service to it. They may think that, yes, this is a thing that we need to do because it's going to save corner stores and the money stays in the community. But when it comes down to it, the minute the things go on sale at Bunnings, Officeworks, Kmart, Big W, Coles and Woolies, that's where we go, because we are driven by what's in it for us. So those kind of words at the top just sort of bounce off us again. They don't sink in. But the things that solve the problems we have along our way to dealing with a cafe, such as the fact that it's close to home, has easy parking. It has the meals you know and love. So you can, if you've got, dietary issues, you can get something that you can eat, where you can actually hear the conversation. This one comes up again and again with people like myself who are trying to have meetings with people in cafes, is that it's great to go to a cafe sometimes where you can actually hear what the other person's saying. Now, close to home, easy parking, meals you know and love, hearing the conversation, they're all things that are important to me as someone who's a customer of a cafe. But the cafe wants to concentrate on messages such as, we love what we do, we roast our own coffee, we bake our own cakes, we're supporting a local business. The sad, blunt fact is that nobody cares about those things. They just want a coffee. The biggest seller of coffee in Australia is not a fancy espresso machine making coffee roasting company. It's McDonald's. McDonald's sells more coffee than anybody else. The coffee club, the chains like Zarafas and Dome, they are the places that sell tons and tons of coffee, not high-end boutique barista fed, Highland cat dropping infused, roasted coffee blenders. None of that is really mattering to people. What matters is that they just get the service they need. That's why McDonald's have had such a success at becoming Australia's biggest cafe, is because they are close to home, pretty easy to park there. You know what you're going to get. And by and large, if you go to a McCafe or a McDonald's restaurant, you can sit at a place where you can actually hear what the other person is saying across the table from you. Sadly, the biggest cafe in Australia is McDonald's. That's so ridiculous. Let's just go to a mechanic. Now, a mechanic may say we're your one-stop shop for repairs, your one-stop repair shop. We've been family-owned for over 3 generations, and we've got a 21-point checklist. These are things that come up all the time in radio ads and TV ads for local mechanics in regional Australia, particularly. And all 3 of those things I couldn't give a damn about, because a 21-point checklist means nothing to me when someone down the road's offering a 42-point checklist. Whoa, look at that. Family owned for over 3 generations. I don't know that family. It doesn't mean anything to me. Your one-stop repair shop. Well, so you should be. You're a mechanic. You should be a place that I can go to get repairs. What I do care about as a customer of those things, though, is things like a same-day service, that they'll pick me up after work to get me back to my car again. They'll drop me off at work in the morning after I've dropped off my car at their workshop. Having a loan car available, that's pretty good. Grabbing a coffee while I wait, things that are in it for me. So whilst we as the mechanic are focusing on the things that we think are great features about our business, we're being overlooked by people who are just in it for themselves. And that's what customers are. They are in survival mode. The whole point of finding the easiest path through life is to save calories and survive, and to look after our families, and to make sure that, that we are comfortable and living a life that we can feel comfortable, we can protect our stuff. If what you're talking about on your website and your social media and all that doesn't help me to save time and calories and energy, doesn't help me to look after my family and those I love, and doesn't help me feel comfortable and safe in the world, then you're probably wasting your breath, because it's hitting me like a big glass wall and bouncing straight back off again. It's a pretty harsh thing, isn't it, when you take a really good look at it? But there's only half of the game when it comes to being the customer's guide. The guide doesn't have to just show that they understand the empathy of knowing what a customer wants. They've also got to be credible. They've got to show some authority. They've got to answer the question, why should I trust you to deliver on that promise of these services and products? So this is done by reassuring someone. So whilst these might seem like features that don't mean anything, like being a gold plate award winner, a COVID safe accreditation, a member of this, 5 stars on TripAdvisor, once you've already made the connection and shown people that you're actually helping to solve a problem in their life, to keep them alive and to keep their family safe and to make their things safe and all that, then you can actually say something like, well, to make you feel better about choosing us, we're a gold plate award winner. We do COVID safe stuff. We make sure we wipe down all the tables and keep everything and surfaces clean. And people seem to like us. We've got 5 stars on TripAdvisor. Now I'm ready to hear you blow your own horn, because these things are quite credible. If someone has awarded you a gold plate, if someone's awarded you 5 stars, if you have been brought into an organization you've had to qualify to get into, if you've had to get that accreditation to be COVID safe, then I feel like I'm safe and can trust you. You're answering all my big questions of life, and now you're proving to me why I can trust you to deliver the goods. For the mechanic, it might be in the case of, we only use Valvoline oils because I think Valvoline's a brand that I know and recognize. I don't know whether I trust it. I don't even know if it's good, but I recognize it at least. I'm not using something from, I don't know, the back shelves of I don't know, where do you buy that sort of thing? Super Cheap Auto, something like that, or Auto Barn, somewhere like that, like the cheapest possible one. They're using this brand name. They've got AANT or RACQ or RACWA approval. They've actually got the they've been approved of as a provider of services under those insurance and breakdown services. They might even be a Chamber of Commerce member. Now, all those things wouldn't make a difference to me unless I felt like I felt like you got and understood what it is I'm actually after and what I'm trying to solve in my life, which is to get a decent repair job done on my car so I can continue going along my life, so I can protect my family, make my money, make things comfortable, survive another day in the jungle. And then I might go, well, now that I understand that you get me, now I'm ready to hear you blow your own trumpet, hear you to tell me, what's so great about your service and all that. So once we have the empathy statement and once we have the authority statements, you've got a much better position for which a customer is then able to trust you and want to move forward with you. So have a think or jot it down if you can. What is something you can say to someone who's considering working with you or buying your product that expresses that you get where they're coming from and you understand what the problem is they're trying to solve? Now, sometimes these things, particularly with people who are in personal services and that kind of thing, they will be looking for some sort of reassurance that everything is going to be fine. And that you've been through this 100 times with so many other people. So you're definitely able to do this thing for them and you totally get where they're coming from. The authority could be things that you're members of, the accreditations you have. COVID Safe is an accreditation of a sorts. Are you a member of Chamber? Are you a member of a tourism association? There's a reason why, one of the reasons why I start off my at the very beginnings of these webinars, I actually show you who I am and what I've done. Is to establish that authority, but not before I throw in a little bit about a quote and what you're going to get out of it. There's a reason why I do my slides in the order that I do. The first thing that I do is to make sure that, number one, I am going to have you understanding what's in it for you out of this particular webinar. Secondly, I'm going to give you an idea of why you can trust me to be able to deliver this information to you. Before I get started on anything else, that's what I do to make sure that you know that I understand what this is all about and that I've got the chops to be able to back it up. So there's method in all these kind of madnesses. There's a reason why things happen the way they do in really well-marketed campaigns and activities. So as we move on now to the fourth step, which is giving our customers, our characters in the movie, a plan to do something. So in this case, it's a plan to blow up the Death Star in Star Wars, or it could be a plan to overcome, Liz's inability to be able to speak Italian when she's in Rome, is to learn Italian. How's she going to do it? Customers trust a guide and trust a business that has a plan to get them through to the goods, to get them to the end of the story. So if you're a coach, for instance, or someone who's working in advisory areas, it could be all about the basic steps you take a client through. So step one, book a discovery call. Step two, after that discovery call, I give you a proposal. Step three, you accept the proposal. Step four, we get started on your work. Just those simple statements, step one, step two, step three, step four, or 3 to 5 different steps with which people will engage with you, or 3 to 5 steps that instruct people on how to buy from you. It inspires confidence because it stops them having to think. They don't have to work all this stuff out for themselves. And you would think that, oh, surely it would be obvious. I've got a contact page there, just put in the contact. It's not. It's not. Remember, human beings are born and die on the basis that we are trying to save time and energy. We've got limited energy and limited time. Well, not really limited energy. I could probably live off my fat stores for about the next 3 weeks or 3 months. But it's more about conserving calories. The brain uses up tons of them. So what we want to do is conserve that by taking the easiest path through life that we possibly can. And if you point out those steps to me, then yes, I don't have to spend extra calories to get the result I'm looking for. So you might then want to point out how we measure success. You might want to point out what the accountability is for being a coach delivering services. Or if it's not about coaching, let's call it catering. I had a situation many, many years ago where I'd never used catering before. I didn't know how to, I catered things myself, but I'd never actually paid for caterers to come. I had no idea how to engage a caterer. So what I did, I went around a whole bunch of websites for local businesses that did catering. and only to find that I still had no idea how to use a caterer. Every one of them had a contact page and they're expecting me to know what to do with catering. No one explained to me how catering works. They just said, here's our menu, here's our contact, call us. Like, well, can you just give me an idea of what I'm calling about? Because I'm going to sound real dumb if I pull up and go, hi, how does catering work? So when I did come across the one website that was in a place that was a fair way from where I was, but was still servicing my area at the time, they actually explained in steps how I engage with the catering, how I choose the food. Here's the options. Choose then whether it gets delivered or whether I pick it up and bring it in myself, or whether they come and collect the dirty dishes and all the presentation dishes and platters, or whether I take them back. They make it really, really simple. They made it a 4-step process. So I go, step 1, choose the food you'd like to have. Step 2, define how many people you'd like to have that food to be able to serve. Step 3, would you like us to deliver it to you, or would you like to pick it up? Step 4, would you like to drop off the dishes to us, or would you like us to come pick them up for them and do the cleaning up for you? It made the whole process so damn simple. Then we go to an accountant. With an accountant, we want to know what they do and don't do. What do they do? Like that, this is a whole thing that happened at the start of my business and may even start at your business as well. You didn't understand the difference between an accountant and a bookkeeper. And funnily enough, not a single accountant or bookkeeper website I've ever been to has ever made that connection and said, oh, maybe people don't know what they need out of these two things, or maybe people don't even understand what we do. They just assume that we know what an accountant does. We know what a bookkeeper does. They do money things, right? And I want to know, though, do I need an accountant or a bookkeeper? And what do those things actually mean? And is it stuff I've got to do, or do I just go all over to you, buddy? You do it all for me. And then my curious nature would actually then ask, how do I know that they're actually doing anything? Now, I'm actually going through a process now where I'm getting rid of my accountant, because I just realized that for the $2,500 a year I'm paying for them, all they literally do is they ingest the information from my Xero account and press a button. And that's all they do. They don't do any analysis at all. They just press a button. And I'm furious because I thought they were looking for the best possible return that I can get. After a really poor one last year, well, I actually owed the tax office money as someone who doesn't spend much money on myself and is constantly spending money on the business. So I was like, this is not right. And as I took a look at what their process was, I got pissed, really seriously pissed, not happy at all, Jan. But my bookkeeper, though, is a completely different beast. He explains in depth what is going on. He wants to catch up every quarter to make sure I'm happy with what's going on. I understand the process of what's going on. He says, hey, we need to put in a BAS because you owe the tax department some money. I go, oh, okay. So you can guide me through that? Yeah, sure. I'll make the arrangements for you. Oh, good. I feel better. My accountant, on the other hand, who gets paid more than my bookkeeper, does one button push a year. If I had known what an accountant does and what a bookkeeper knows, I wouldn't have been ripped off like that. The 1, 2, 3, 4-step thing was actually a little bit earlier in this particular webinar. Remember when I pulled up that you do a guided brand script session at MyStoryBrand.com, you uncover what your brand message may be, and you apply your brand script to your website marketing materials. That's a perfect example of that. On my website, for instance, it has, how do you engage with me as a digital advisor? Number 1, book a 15-minute discovery call so we can work out what's going on. Number 2, I put a proposal forward to you so that you know what the possibilities are and how much it's going to cost. Number 3, we negotiate what's going to work for you to come up with the plan for you moving forward. Number 4, then finally we get underway and we transform your digital marketing to something that actually works and works for you. So that's my 4 steps. You're going to have steps too. What are the 3 or 4 steps that it takes for people to work with you? Could it be that they make a call? Do they make an email? Do they go to your website? Do they chat with you on Facebook? What are the processes that they need to understand as far as what the terms of engagement are? And then secondly, once you've got those steps all worked out, then we start to look at the agreements that are in place to make people feel reassured that they're safe and they're making the right decision in life. So that's where you'll say, for instance, is a money back guarantee within 30 days. Or something like we make sure we check in with you every quarter to make sure you're happy and you know what's going on. So that, in a sense, is what you say you are able to do as part of your process of engagement with them. But secondly, then you give them that reassurance that, look, if things go wrong, it's okay. We've got a way for you to get out of this. Now, as we move into the really active part of it, we talk about a call to action. A call to action is asking your customer to do something. And the call to action comes from, from movies. You might have seen Rain Man, that Dustin Hoffman's character would not have got picked up by his brother, who was played by Tom Cruise, if their father hadn't died. There had to be a catalyst. There had to be a call to action. They're basically people saying that your father is dead. You need to come and get your brother now. You are now looking after him. There's no option there. Tom Cruise's character would never have done it unless he had that call to action to come and meet his brother and to pick him up. Likewise, Elle Woods, in the greatest movie of all time, Legally Blonde, would not have applied to Harvard if her boyfriend hadn't dumped her first. Isn't that amazing? She wouldn't have gone forward and done all those things if the boyfriend hadn't have already dumped her. The call to action was the dumping of the boyfriend that made her go, well, I'm going to be smart and go to Harvard and I'll get my boyfriend back. And of course, the later example of that is that she didn't get the boyfriend back because she didn't want the boyfriend back. She actually got so smart and she got so educated, she realized that he was a dick. It's hard to use a bit of French there, but he was a dick and she could do so much better than him in the end. Calls to actions look a bit like this. Call now, book now, limited time only, until sold out, download, buy, all those kind of things that are telling you to do the big thing now. But they're also backed up with what we call transitional calls to action. But you need to know that you're confident at selling your product and confident to ask for the sale. So many of us in business really struggle with this. We really struggle with asking for the money, asking for the sale, and actually asking someone to move forward, because we don't want our website to feel too salesy. We don't want our social media to feel like it's asking for people to do something or to action on it. The problem is, though, that comes from a root of a disbelief in what you're doing. If you believe in what you're doing, it won't take much for you to ask people to buy it. If you believe in it, you'll ask them to act. If you don't believe in it, they're going to sense it and they're going to move on. But if they're at a point where they're not quite ready to commit to that buy yet, that transitional call to action, which is not these ones, these are the very direct things, the buy now, book now, shop now, all that stuff. The transitional calls to action are a bit like you asking someone to marry you and they say no. And you say, oh, okay, will you go out with me again? Yeah, why not? So will you marry me now? Well, no. Will we go out with me again? Yeah, sure. You're interesting. The info you provide is helpful. Let's go out again. And then finally, after umpteen amount of dates and wooing and courting, will you marry me? Yep. Okay, I'll marry you now. It's the same thing with a customer, particularly for high value online delivered services, whether you're delivering a service, which is, a delivery and pickup service, whether it's delivering meals that are far more expensive than what you can make for yourself at home, or whether you are doing coaching services, which you're actually giving your time and expertise to help someone else succeed. You will need these transitional calls to action. And what they look like is this. A transitional call to action is something to give someone to do before they're ready to commit to the big thing you're trying to sell. So it comes in the form of things like download my ebook, sign up for my newsletter, listen to my podcast, watch this video to find out more information. So that's a step towards. So once you've got them doing those little things that don't really cost them anything or only cost them a little bit, they then build a trust and a bit of rapport with you. They understand how you work. They can prove to themselves that you know what you're doing. So these little things are there for a reason on lots of websites everywhere. It's because they offer a piece of the cake, but not the whole cake. And that piece of the cake is enough to convince them, this girl, she knows what she's doing. That guy, he really knows what he's talking about. And then they can move forward confidently into that final step, which is booking the big expensive thing that you want to actually do that helps you to reach your big, hairy, audacious goals in life. So think about what your particular call to action may be. What is your particular thing you need someone to do? Do you want them to book now, buy now, shop now, download now? What is it you need them to do? And then secondly, what are those transitional calls to action that you can provide along the way? This is a lot to take in a 1 hour webinar, isn't it? And we're still about 5 minutes to go and we're nearly there, right? I promise you it's not far to go. This is a lot of info. So ultimately, as the guide, as the business that's delivering this service or this product to these people, you want to help your customers to be successful in whatever they're doing with you. But you also just as much want to help them to avoid failure. So success looks great, but failure is actually a bit of a deeper motivation for most people. And we know that by the $100 test. Let's just say you're walking down the street in your town, you picked up $100 off the ground, have a look around, see if anyone's around. Nah, okay, that's mine, finders keepers. And you go and spend the money, it's gone pretty much within a day, or it's gone to go towards the bills or something. And within a couple of weeks, you've forgotten you ever did it because it's not really that important, right? Well, that's generally what happens when you have the success thing. We're a bit masochistic human beings. We tend to love failure. We dwell on failure, not the successes. We don't celebrate the successes anywhere near as much as we just want to mope about in the losses. We're motivated more by the fear of loss, and it can be explained by what I call the circle of threat. So the circle of threat is often produced in things like in insurance ads, service ads, things that are sort of talking about a threat that might happen to you. So it'll say something like, you are vulnerable to a threat. You should take action to avert that threat. And here's how you avoid that threat. And finally, go on, take that action to avoid that threat. Now, that sounds all very, very vague, but you'll see what I mean when I do it in terms of a termite control company. Number one, termites can damage your home, costing you tens of thousands of dollars. That is, you are vulnerable to a threat. You can do something about it and save your home. You can do something about that threat. Start with a termite check to make sure you're okay, and so you know if you're safe. This is what you can do about that threat. Call today and book your inspection. Now, avert that threat and do this thing. That's the circle of threat. So many services can be around this, but it doesn't always have to be that nasty and horrible. It doesn't have to be about termites. It can be about, going to, actually, I'm going to pull back on that one. In the same way as it talks about threats to termites, it talks about imagine going all your life without ever seeing Uluru at sunset. Well, you can do something about that now by booking. Jetstar has $89 return airfares from Brisbane. So you can book them now at jetstar.com. So that's talking about this. The threat isn't so an existential threat such as your house falling down. The threat is more likely to be something closer to, you're just going to miss out on a big, great thing. But you can avert that threat. You can actually do the big, great thing. And here's the steps to do it. Finally, do it. Book that flight. Book that Jetstar flight to get to Uluru. Funny that Jetstar goes to Uluru and not to Alice Springs. It's just always kind of made me think that's just dumb. So what are the negative consequences of someone who doesn't use your service or product? And likewise, what are the positive outcomes that happen if they do use your product or service? So if you are following along, jot those down because we're just a couple of minutes away from wrapping up. So you'll get that idea of there's a bunch of things that are great if they use my stuff, they buy my stuff, but there's also consequences if they don't. Remember the consequences of Luke Skywalker not actually finishing what he was doing were that the galaxy would fall into chaos and the Empire would reign and more planets would be destroyed. They were pretty big consequences for the poor young kid. But if the consequence of your customer is simply that they won't be able to get their recycling picked up on time, or they miss the recycling thing, it's going to sit there and stink up the yard, or they're going to lose their bond, or whatever your particular set of consequences are, why people will use your service or your business, jot those down. Ultimately, you want your customer to transform from something to something. You want to transform from being absolutely helpless and not knowing what to do with this situation to overcoming. Now, what are the next steps for you? You can do the guided brand script session by watching some interactive videos and filling out your brand script yourself at MyStoryBrand.com. It helps you to uncover what those messages may be, but you may need to see someone like me who's a brand script and certified StoryBrand consultant to be able to go through that process. Or you might be able to apply your brand script once you've got it to your marketing materials, your website, your social media, all that sort of stuff. These are the steps you can take, the next steps you can take to apply what you've learned tonight in that. What I would probably say is that before the end of July, you can book me taking you through this StoryBrand session, actually delivering those messages to you a week later for only this month, because the ASVAS program is wrapping up in its current form. at asbas.com.au. So you can go through there. If you're already a part of ASBAS, like all of you will be because you had the book through here, then you can then book in an hour with me to do that. Depending on where you are, you might be at the, your first one's $44 or any subsequent ones are $66. But think about it. It takes, I guess it gives you a shortcut on doing that. Now, I do have some new availability later this month. The early part of the month is almost completely booked out, but the later part of the month, I've opened up a few days where there's actually plenty of chances for you to do this sort of stuff. So I do welcome you to do that. And overall, I just thank you for taking some time out of your businesses and out of your lives to learn something new about your own business. My name's Dante St. James. You can contact me through that email address on the screen, dante@treaty.com.au. And I will see you hopefully in the next one or at one of our own certified StoryBrand sessions. Thank you again and good night.